What's up, everybody? It's about that time for another edition of the Crew Radio Show. I'm Kevin Swan, co-host of the show, and the crew are professional people who are also friends that come together to talk about the things you want us to talk about. We talk about it all, and we don't hold back. So come on and join us for another edition of the Crew Radio Show. Welcome to the Crew here on WHOV 88.1 FM, right here on our podcast, YouTube at the Crew Radio Show. So if you're listening to us, go to YouTube where you can see us at the Crew Radio Show. Now, Jay, this can't be a barbershop today. You know, we got a lady in the barbershop.
Oh, but technically it can. You know?
I mean, hey, Jay, we got to be more gentle today. You know what I'm saying? We can't.
Do we?
Right, do we really?
Do we? We ain't seen that girl in a long time. Let's bring her in.
Hold her weight with the boys, man.
Yeah.
Maybe we can. What you think, Jack?
Just do it.
I say
I don't need any training wheels.
Let's go ahead and knock it out. Let's go ahead and knock out the park.
Al, good to see you today.
It's good to be with y'all.
Yeah, glad to have you. So
back with the crew. Yeah.
Back with the crew. Absolutely. And we've been praying for you. Let me just say that.
Thank you. Thank you. And can I just say, just for a quick second, our listeners are phenomenal. I got so many messages of care and concern for mommy, and I appreciate all of y'all, that it is so much more than you guys just listening to our show. You guys are our extended family, and we appreciate that kind of love and loyalty and really caring about us when we're off air too. So thank you all for all of your messages and all of the condolences. My mommy is in heaven now. But I am just so grateful to have shared such a beautiful life with her and to experience such an outpouring of love surrounding, her loss. So just know I love all of y'all out there, and thank you for everything that you've done and said for me and my family.
Yeah, we love you, Al. Love your family too.
Love y'all back.
Continue to pray for you. So now to the business at hand. So,
yes.
We were last week, was it? Couple of weeks ago, we were at the social justice conference, right? And we had the headline session for the afternoon on talking about, is DEI necessary? Great panel. You guys did an awesome job. And from that, we realized that 1 hour to talk about our topic was certainly not anywhere near enough. And then we got some feedback also of conversations and things that people wanted us to continue to discuss. So that's why we're going to keep this conversation going. I know, Jay, shout out to you. You kind of showed last week some of the snippets from our presentation at the Social Justice Conference. So if you haven't seen that, you can jump on our YouTube page, The Crew Radio Show, check it out. And then you can also be a part of this one as well. So, Jay, we did get some comments, right? So I know one in particular that you wanted to make sure that we address and talk about, man. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so basically, this contributor, he or she was in our audience last week and answered a couple of questions we posed to our audience. And I'm going to drop that same link on this show today. So we want to hear from you. So if you want to continue the conversation, you can do that. But one of the questions we asked was, has DEI affected you personally? And this individual said, yes, conversations about DEI directly led to me leaving my past employer. And then part of the conversation we asked, what was DEI? And this individual said, speaking in terms of organizational culture, DEI means for me an established set of values out of which an organization will operate and declares a state of being it hopes to realize. Diversity in every circle of humans involved, equity in how circles are made accessible to those diverse humans, as well as how services products are provided, and inclusion of all of the authentic identities, stories, and needs represented in those circles. I appreciate organizations that have also emphasized DEIB with the B standing for belonging, something that we can seem elusive and subjective, but we all crave it, and some willing to cause all their DEI initiatives to aim toward belonging. Lastly, DEI often also means that very practices that will be adopted and mechanisms by which success will be measured as the organization transforms its culture within a larger culture, still foreign and frequently adversarial to these concepts being normalized.
That was a very thoughtful. Yeah.
I'll start with you. I'll let you break that down. I feel like Sanford or something, you know what I'm saying? The two of Hoppy and Smitty, you know what I'm saying? When they break it all down, and then Smitty say, break it down for me, you know what I'm saying? So Al, tell us, what did you think about that extensive and informative comment?
And very thoughtful, yeah, because that person is really speaking to that there is a broader conversation that organizations are really wrestling with right now about, which is what we were talking about. Is it necessary still? And I think that the overall conclusion is yes, it is unequivocally necessary. The conversation around how that is packaged might be a different story, but the value fundamentally is necessary for the United States for all kinds of historical reasons and context. So the person who was kind enough to take that time to thoughtfully share was speaking to the fact that in real time, these things have real consequences in organizations, the human experience inside of an organization. And the thing that's crazy about the DEI conversation is that we treat it like it's just these boxes that are one-dimensional component of who people are. In reality, we are all human who come with these unique facets of our humanity. And all the conversation was really designed to do is to make sure that there was no facet of any human that was not welcome inside of the workplace. Really, that's what fundamentally was meant to be. Has it been hijacked in extremes in both directions? Unequivocally. But the core of it was about that capital B that you heard Jason speak to, that the audience member had contributed. It was a sense of belonging. It is one thing to be present inside of an organization. It's a whole other thing to feel like you belong inside of an organization. So we're not talking about a kumbaya concept that everybody feels loved and, we're all best friends and we have tea parties at each other's house. That's not what DEI was looking for. It was also not affirmative action or quotas. It was none of those things. It was a fundamental understanding that the playing field historically in America has never been level. So how are we going to try to level the playing field in ways that create open doors for diverse ideas, talents, concepts, and understandings and life experiences to be seen, heard, and valued inside of the workplace? That doesn't mean that everybody is going to agree, and that was never the goal. But it was about the fact that there were no individuals who knew that they were systematically excluded from any conversation or decision making or representation, because we know that representation drives outcomes. So the person who was contributing that comment, I think the big takeaway from that is that letter B, the sense of belonging. And that for that person, a lived experience of DEI meant that they left an organization because of their abandonment of, or the inconsistencies between their values and that individual, with that undertone of, I didn't feel like I belonged there. And it had attrition consequences for the organization.
100%. And let's assume for a moment that there are some who are listening or watching us who was not present at the CNU conference. And let's assume also they did not watch the video as last time at the conference. So for people who are not familiar at all with DEI, other than what they have seen in the news, and depending on which news outlet you watch, that's going to get a varied opinion.
Totally changes how you feel about it, right?
So how can both of you kind of explain DEI in simple terms? Let's take out the polarization of it. Let's just have what is it for people who don't know exactly what it is? And that's for either of you to start.
You want to start, Jason?
I mean, I think Swan, when we had our seminar the other week, when you gave us the example of the boxes, for me, that's the easiest way for even the most simple or people who need it broken down. DEI just makes sure everyone has the same accessibility to be able to accomplish the most basic of tasks. Like you go up to a restaurant and you go to the curb. If there's no dip in that curb, how does somebody in a wheelchair get up there? We're not talking about black. We're not talking about white, Filipino. We're just talking about equal access. If I want to go and if I'm handicapped and I can't go up 2 flights of stairs, I want one or two things: an escalator or an elevator. And the way my body's set up, I'm not handicapped. I'm just big boned. I'm looking for an escalator and or an elevator. It's just allowing people to be able to get to these vehicles, these mechanisms, like our audience member said, in an equitable way. However, people have used that word DEI or DEIB. When I read that comment, I was panicked. I said, "What does the B stand for?" But that sense of belonging, I think Alvin, you touched on it when we had our strategy call for that. Yes, DEI, it rolls down to dollars and cents, but it pulls on that emotional um, heartstring that if I'm in a wheelchair, I keep referring to it because that's an example, not disrespect anyone that's in a wheelchair. But if I'm in a wheelchair and I'm trying to get to a baseball game, if I'm trying to get to a football game, and all my friends get in, and there's no elevator to get me up to that Philly game, like I'm gonna feel left out. And this, for me, that's the most simple way to explain what DEI is. What it is not saying that only black people or only white people have access to these things. It's saying that any and all people have access to equal playing field.
And I think that, to your point, Jason, I think the other thing that needs to be very clearly understood is that DEI was really meant to speak to equal opportunity, not equal outcome, right? And too many people were treating it as if it was an expectation around the outcome. That just because we make sure everybody can get in the door doesn't mean that everybody is going to end up the CEO of the company. There is still room for merit-based ascension inside of any organization, nonprofit, or corporation. No one was saying that just because someone comes in whatever physical phenotypic package, that they should be given special privileges in order to have everything graded on a curve in order to make sure that they had the same outcomes as the next. It was merely to say, are we making sure that when we are considering how we're building a facility, how we're utilizing technology, and I say utilizing technology because it's to say that if I am deaf, because I sign, and I'm not fluent, but I can sign. So if I am deaf and the technology you use is all for hearing individuals, then I know that you don't care that I'm here at this organization. So it doesn't matter how brilliant I am, you have shut me out, exclusion. So the I is inclusion in DEI. You have excluded me from being able to use my talent, skills, and ability to serve the mission, vision of this organization. So DEI is really about creating the necessary leveling of the playing field for access so that there is opportunity and then ultimately merit, ideally, unless you have a racist system or you're purposely you're focused on ableism. That is to say that if you don't have the same physical ability, then we don't care about you. We're not trying to see you succeed. If you're dealing with any of the isms, then it wouldn't matter that I get in the door. But assuming that you don't have a racist or ableist system that underpins your organization, then I get the opportunity to work my way to what I deserve relative to that entity. So we just have the weaponization of DEI because politics loves to do that, has totally eroded what it really speaks to. But for those who don't know, it was really about a level playing field for accessibility of all, in order for those individuals to have the opportunity to serve and contribute in meaningful ways.
Yeah, that's right. And to kind of go back to Jason, because you talked about the picture that we shared in the conference, for those who may not have known what that picture looks like, and maybe Jay, you can put the picture somewhere on our YouTube channel. But imagine three people who are standing behind a fence trying to watch a baseball game. This is what the picture is for those of you who have never seen it. Mm-hmm. There's the person on the left who's an adult who is tall enough to stand on his own and see over the fence to be able to watch the game. The person in the middle is not as tall as the person on the left, so they need one crate to stand on in order to see over the fence and watch the game. And then the shortest person of the three is on the right side. This person needs 2 or 3 crates to be able to stand over the fence to be able to watch the game. That is the difference between equality and equity. Equity is you're giving the people who don't have the ability to see over the fence, essentially, the same opportunity as the one who can stand by themselves to be able to see over the fence. So if it means resources or things that allow them to see over or give the same right and perspective as somebody else, that in a nutshell is what DEI is. Now, to Alvian's point, you know, these things are incorporation. It doesn't mean that you're gonna get promoted. It just means access. And for anybody that watch sports, you know, the NFL is big in our country. I'm a huge Pittsburgh Steelers fan. The NFL, Alvian and Jason, had to put a rule in called the Rooney Rule. And the Rooney Rule is named after the owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers, Art Rooney. And so years ago, there are over 30 NFL teams currently. And about 10 years ago, the NFL had a huge issue on their hands because historically speaking, minority coaches were being overlooked, head coaches, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was only a very, very small percentage of minority head coaches. What they discovered was it wasn't even just that owners were just hiring white coaches. It was that owners weren't even interviewing any persons of color. So how could you even be considered for the job if you're not even in an interview? So the Rooney Rule, which still stands in the NFL, says that an NFL owner cannot hire anyone for a head coaching position unless they first have to include a minority candidate, a legitimate minority candidate to be in the process. And so people might look at that and say, well, is that affirmative action? Is that DEI? No, that's addressing the why of DEI, which is what I want to talk about. You know, this notion, Alvian, of merit, that people would just go on merit is flawed because our system is fundamentally skewed to white men. So the notion that all of a sudden the system that is broken will be fixed so that now we can just go by merit and have a colorless society, that has never, ever worked in the history of our country.
Not in America. And no, you're absolutely right. And it's because the way that the system was set up.
Which is the why. Now tell them why we need it. Right.
So like it's if you have a funnel and the funnel is only coming from a particular water source, and let's say that that water source is salt water, there is no way that at the bottom of the pool, you're going to get a freshwater pool. You're not even going to get, for those who fish, you're not even going to get brackish water. That's where salt water and freshwater meet. You're not even going to get brackish water because the funnel is coming from a salt-based source. So the point of DEI is to ensure that you're expanding the funnel so that ultimately you have the opportunity for there to be anything different than what would be guaranteed at the bottom if you have a single source at the top. That's all they're speaking to, right? That's all that DEI was really speaking to. And to your point with the Rooney Rule, Kev, is that like, if I only recruit from a institution that has, for the sake of this conversation, and I'm using the Rooney Rule if it were to apply to other things in life, if I only recruit as an organization from institutions that have barely 3% people of color in the entire institution, then the likelihood that from 10 candidates that there's going to even be a candidate of color inside of that, very unlikely, because the source that you are fishing from does not have enough representation for you to have that inside of your funnel very easily. It would be an aberration for that to take place. But if you are saying that what we will now do is make sure that we are not just going to ABC University, but that has almost an all white majority of students or candidates, we are also going to super diverse universities and historically Black universities to provide the same information so that there is the opportunity to have other candidates. You are not ignoring white institutions, which is what this, the reflexive weaponization of DEI has created, to say, well, that means that you're now ignoring white candidates. Nobody is ever and has ever been suggesting that. What they're simply saying is make sure included in the potential for choice is a diverse representation of individuals. If you got 20 Black candidates and there are 2 white candidates and you still choose one of the white candidates, so be it. That is, you have to, the organization themselves has to ask themselves, was that a question of the best person for the job, or is that a question of maintaining a status quo? You've got to do that. But at least we know that there was the opportunity for other candidates to be part of that conversation, or part of that job opportunity, or the filling of that job opportunity. We're just speaking to at least provide the access. But people are getting upset even about the access, as if somehow that is reverse racism, which is the argument now, that is reverse racism to be intentional about inclusion, which is utterly ridiculous. Now, I am not ignoring, and then I will hush, I am not ignoring the fact that there are some folks that took it way too far. And I am not ignoring the fact that there are some folks that, even if you had taken it an inch, they would have been screaming in an uproar. The reality is that people had their own agendas coming into this in the first place. So the goodness of something that was really designed about the health of America really got ruined by the extreme agendas on either side.
Yes, and that's how it got politically hijacked.
Yep.
And then also now it has become racially
Yeah.
So now you got race and politics included in DEI. So now DEI is a code for Black promotion.
Or for reverse racism, because that's
Correct.
exactly what it's been turned into, which is so utterly ridiculous. But that's the conversation now.
Correct, because you had during the presidential candidacy, people from the Republican side calling Kamala Harris a DEI hire. Not that she has been qualified, like the only reason of which a Black
that she
woman
was picked, right,
could
be anywhere
is because you had somebody had to just give you the job.
Yeah,
right?
you didn't earn anything.
Correct. And so that's where we are now. But if you have done your research and you've gotten past media spin and really begin to understand who DEI impacts, Alvian, you would know, as you have communicated to corporations, that the biggest
beneficiary
of DEI is white women.
Yep, 100%.
Not Black people.
100%.
Talk about that, please, about how white women are benefiting from DEI more than anybody else.
Well, so here's the thing, too, connected to that. Historically speaking, it wasn't that long ago that even in the United States, if a man was beating his wife, and we're talking about a white man and his white wife, all the police could do was say, you've got to do that more quietly. That's how little America even cared about its white women, if we're going to talk about the history of America. Now, let me be clear for anyone who is new to our show and who does not understand our conversation in context. You're talking about an entire crew of individuals who serve this country in various forms in every lane possible and who absolutely love America. What we don't love is that America has a potential to be all kinds of things that are absolutely the heart of God, and we choose to maintain things that are anti-biblical or godly purposes, okay? So our issue is anything you love, just like God loves man, and he chastens us, he disciplines us, he speaks to us when we are wrong because of how much he loves us. That's the nature of this conversation also. We are not anti-America. We love America so much that we're calling America to its highest possible potential. So I want to be crystal clear in this conversation, because there are going to be new people joining us as a byproduct of the various things they've participated in hearing us have conversation. So America's history, not a divisive conversation as if we are warping the truth. America's history, we're just talking about the facts of America, is that America has not seen women as a whole, white women in particular, before we even get to the Black women or the Hispanic women or Asian women. White women were the property of their husbands also in various ways. So they couldn't vote either. You couldn't get a loan without your husband being able to say yes to a loan. So there were not only social implications, there were financial implications, there were federal implications. The list goes on. And I'm not even, history is not even my area of expertise, but you could take 2 seconds to see what the chronology of America has been relative to the rights of women. So when you're talking about who first came into the workforce, it was white women coming into the workforce. It was white women who were attempting to be or get close to being the equals of their spouses in their ability to provide for their families or actively contribute. So when companies were working on addressing the issues of equity, they didn't go to Black people first. It went to first in, and that was white women. So when you look at, if you just do the data, and we won't be that specific in this particular conversation, but if you just look at the data in terms of who is at the C levels in most companies, highest representation, white men. Second highest, white women. Then after that comes Black men and Black women. More often than not, now as you look at it, 2010 and above, more and more people of color, particularly Black women, are moving into entrepreneurial roles. So instead of waiting to get a seat at the table, we are all building our own tables now. And you're seeing more and more of that from a Black community perspective, because folks are tired of waiting to be seen and treated as equal. Fine, if that's not what you want to do, what we do know is what is equal in America is the dollar. And so we're going to go ahead and build our own tables and control our own dollars, so we do not have to wait for the handouts of someone's care for equity.
Yeah, that's the funny part, Al, because Jay, Black people have been used to this all along, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being excluded, right?
This is America.
We know within our community, we tell our kids, we've been told, in order to survive in white corporate America, you got to be twice as good, right? To just get a shot. So this notion that we need a handout is ridiculous, because if you just even the playing field, you would see for yourself, right? Now, the truth of the matter is that who's really being hurt, as Alvin said, is white women, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when they are voting against their own
best
interests,
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
is the part that is troubling. Mm-hmm. But part of the reason why, Jay, is going back historically, because if you know how our country played out, so the little history lesson, y'all. So 15th Amendment was ratified in 1870. That gave Black men the right to vote. Now, to Alvin's point, Black men were allowed to vote in our country before white women. Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't until the 19th Amendment, 1919, mm-hmm. that gave women the right to vote. Mm-hmm. So this notion that America has been set up to support white men and white women is ridiculous. It's strictly for white men. And Black men have been thrown down the rung, so now it's white women were saying during that period of time, how to their husbands and spouses back then in the 1800s, how are you going to let a Black man vote before me? This is what pushed the narrative of them to be able to vote. So I hope our vanilla brothers and sisters are listening, that what you have essentially done is hurt your own interests, not ours, because we're used to this. This is how it's always been. But yet
this is our America. That's the America we know.
Yeah, and so Jay, to me, all of this is when you want to slash DEI, to me, this is me personally, Jay, it's because you want to continue to control power. Because anytime you level the playing field, you risk losing power and influence, because there could be somebody that's better than you at doing your job and all of that. How do you feel about that, Jay?
Man, I wish I could remember. I saw it on social media earlier this week that talked about that very thing you alluded to in that statement. Fear is a terrible thing.
Yes.
Fear will have you doing irrational
Yes.
things. It will have you doing fear. Fear. If you look at the animal kingdom, when a rat or some kind of marsupial gets caught in a trap, because they're so fearful of dying and getting caught, they will
They'll
gnaw
throw
their
off their
own leg
own
off
leg.
to
Yep.
get away. Or if you look at lizards, when you grab them by the tail, they'll sever their own tail to get away from you. What am I saying? If you allow fear to drive you, you'll do the very thing that's meant to harm you, trying to
To
get
yourself,
trying to
and
get
you'll do
healthy.
it to
Right.
yourself. Yep. Yep.
And what's so funny is I was watching one of the news cycles. I try not to watch the news because it's skewed one way or the other. I haven't really found one that's like in the middle. But I was watching it and I saw a white woman up there, and she said, "Had I known I was voting for," and she started voting, naming all these things because she worked in, I believe, the Department of Education. She said, "Had I known if I would have voted for him, I would be voting for my job to be demolished." And I'm looking at him like, he told you what he was going to do.
Yeah.
He told you he was getting rid of the Department of Education. He told you he was going to bring his boys in. If you looked at the inauguration, you saw all those billionaires sitting behind him. He told you what he was going to do. But you thought that you were going to be safe. You thought, we in the back, we just like, this is going to be a train wreck. And I saw the other stuff with the black women sitting on the roof, sipping some tea and watching America
Yep.
burn.
We knew it was coming. Yep.
we knew what was coming. I knew what was coming. I wanted, I don't want this to become a political show, but I wanted one candidate to win. She didn't win. And I'm like, does America hate women or hate change so much they're willing to go into something that they know is going to be to the detriment of who we are just to say we're not doing that? So again, man, I just land on fear. Fear is, man, if we don't stop being scared and put on some big boys and big girl draws and go ahead and do this thing like we need to, we in
It's
for a
the
world of
fear of
hurt.
what though? Because part of that is it's they the being ingrained in terms of transgenders are going to take over your bathrooms. Is that the fear? Is it the fear that by 2050, America will become much more of a melting pot of black and brown people, and that whites may become the minority? Is that the fear? Is it the fear that you're going to lose for white men the power that white men have been afforded ever since this country was founded? Is it that you're fearful of immigrants coming into the country and illegally, and all of a sudden they're going to be violent toward you and make your cities less safe? Like, what part of the fear are we talking about here? Because to me, if you're going to say that, then that says all of those things were more important than you having equal representation and equal rights. And I'm just trying to figure out, Alvin, like, if he told you this, and yet, okay, we're saying that they are afraid. You're more afraid of those things, apparently, than losing your rights.
Well, the other thing is you've got to keep in mind, and like, so I tested something out one day. Well, I want to say one day because it was for a period of time. For a period of time, I purposely only listened to the news on one particular station just to see how it would change how I felt about what was happening. And let me tell you, even as an informed person, the more you listen to something, the more you begin to believe what you're hearing. That's why the Bible says faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. Well, that works in the perverse also, right? So that's why we're told to guard our ear gate and our eye gate, that the things that we consume, not just food, but the things that we consume change who we are on the inside. So there's a reason why marketing is a multi-trillion-dollar entity. There's a reason why there's so much money spent on convincing you to buy things, to the subliminal messages, all of that. It is reshaping your psyche. So if you are in a very homogenous society, that you are only around people who look like you, think like you, talk like you, And if all of that information is what's shared over and over and over again, you normalize things that are dysfunctional and you begin to believe them as truth and even good for you. That is why the Bible also says, to the hungry heart, every bitter thing is sweet. If you are starved of actual facts, then the lie tastes good. So like it is not just about women being able to see and understand what it is that the part of the apple that they just bit and they chose evil. It's not just that. It's that it's being fed to them through the sources that they are most close to. So if the vast majority of white women are married to white men, and for white men in America right now, they have been fed the idea that their livelihood, their lifestyle, their place in America is under attack, whether accurate or not. If that's what you are being fed, and then being a white male feels like a dirty word to you all of a sudden, you never, ever felt like that in America before, then you yourself are scared for the fact that somehow, just think from a human perspective, somehow something is fundamentally wrong with you. You've never experienced that. As people of color, we've lived our entire lives experiencing that there's something wrong with us just by coming out of the womb brown. Okay. So we have had to learn how to survive and to elevate in spite of, where many of our counterparts have learned how to survive and elevate because of. So when you take away the thing, or you make me feel like the thing that has been my because of, my source, is now under attack, because when you level the playing field, people who had more than they were supposed to have to even give the other person even a little bit of what they were supposed to have feels like something's being taken away. So all of these things are part of the psychological experience that is so much more human than it is about race or not. It's just that because the issue is race-based, it is playing out as if it's not just what humans do when humans feel afraid, but because we're using race as the thing to make people fear. That is why it is so ugly, so divisive, and so messy.
Yeah, and it became a black issue, along with critical race theory became a black issue, and being woke is a black issue.
Oh, yeah.
And all of these terms that imply a racial tension in spaces. And so I think that's, if to your point, if fear is going to drive that and bring that up, somebody's got to be the one responsible for all of it. So it seems like it's got to be black and brown people continually here in our country. But again, Jason, you work at a school, and today a federal judge just blocked temporarily President Trump's initiatives for DEI to be banned in schools K through 12. And so for maybe somebody who is still not understanding the significance of DEI or its importance, especially in schools, because maybe they don't understand, can you give an example of how DEI actually helps students to be better, more successful, better learners, all that kind of stuff?
So yeah, for example, you have Title I schools that have federally funded monies, and they get, it's not for poor people. People get that misunderstood. It's not poor people. It's giving extra access to those who don't have the normal accessibility to different things. Case in point, family engagement specialists. They're funded by the federal government through grants and things of that nature. But without the family engagement specialists that connects family with other strategic community partners, not just paying the bills, but connecting them with strategic planning, with parent planning, um, helping them to be able to understand budgets and to be able to do things like that. When you remove that funding, you lose the layer of support. So now that parent that is struggling to do different things, they don't have that extra support, as well as testing apparatus, different accommodations, IEPs, 504s, all those things, scholarships for your higher education, all those things tie into that bull of DEI. And without it, because it's been hijacked and now it's a color thing, you the kids, they get hurt because they don't have that same level of accessibility.
And
To that
just to
point,
jump in,
go ahead.
just to jump in very quickly, the same lie was told around welfare, that it was all Black people who were benefiting from it, not realizing that the greatest beneficiaries of what people used to refer to as welfare now, considered, the combination of SNAP benefits, the EBT cards that you guys see, the additional funds that are received, which might I add are not large, just for the record. But and when I say not large, a family of 6, depending upon where you are, they may only be getting like $600, and so we're not talking about people being able to go get Mercedes on what the government is giving to them. But, I will not digress too much. But the vast majority of people who are benefiting from these programs were in rural America. That is not where Black people are. But because somebody is or some bodies have been very effective at making this thing, anything that was supporting people of color, to be a thing that is draining America, you don't even realize that you're going to be killing your brothers and sisters, killing them financially, I'm talking about, not literally, but you're harming your brothers and sisters. Same thing with Medicaid, Medicare. When we start talking about health coverage, we don't want those people to be able to get this because they're living off of your tax dollars. If you remove the funding, it's not people of color who are going to struggle the most. So over and over again, the way in which the narrative has been written it's a false flag. It's not real. This is not real. But if you're hearing it constantly because it's being fed to you in terms of a media narrative, because the news does lie, the media narrative that has been crafted for you, you're going to believe that your neighbor is your problem, and that's not really your problem at all.
No, and so again, to that point, African Americans only make 13%, 14% max of the total population of America.
Of the whole.
Right. So if you're going by sheer numbers, then that means overwhelmingly the number of people who are on welfare is white people.
Correct.
Because they are the majority of the country.
Correct.
So this whole narrative is very misleading. Right. so to your point, Alvy, look, so President, what's his name? Trump or Musk? President
Elon.
Yeah. And Doge decided to cut $20 million of a grant that went to Norfolk State.
Mm.
Those of you who don't know, Norfolk State is an HBCU. And this went to teachers, right? A teacher program that was at Norfolk State. Now, somebody might look at that on the surface and be like, yeah, see, this is what we're talking about, giving Black kids the opportunity to teach in places. No, this is what the program was for. The program was to, yes, help develop minority teachers, but it was also to help them and then place them in rural counties that are overwhelmingly white, because you could not get teachers, white or otherwise, to go out to the counties and teach. So when you cut a program like this, you're not hurting the Black teachers, because every school division needs teachers. But right. The issue here is that nobody's going to want to go out to these rural areas that you talked about, Alvin, like in Southwest Virginia or in other parts of the state where there's very few resources, very limited opportunities. Nobody wants to live there, but they got schools. So what you're going to end up happening now is, you think there's a school shortage in the cities, there's going to be a much more severe school shortage of teachers, administrators, educators in these rural areas. But you thought you had a win because you cut the budget from Norfolk State.
Absolutely. And we have to understand that these decisions have significant implications. And I think that that's the point that we're making as we're coming to about 3 minutes left in all of this. The point that we were making in our at the conference was understanding that yes, DEI is necessary, but not for the reasons that the narrative is pretending that it is. It's necessary for all kinds of very real lived experiences that are not Black experiences. They are just American experiences. Black people just happen to be part of the population that is inside of these experiences, but we are not those most significantly impacted by what happens when there is a withdrawal, because we've lived in an America that didn't have it in the first place.
Facts. And I know we got to run, and we're going to continue this conversation as well, because it's not just DEI. It's a much broader issue about how we view race in America, how we view opportunity, all the stuff that comes along with it. But we got to run at this point. Hope you've enjoyed the show. If you're listening and now watching, check us out on our YouTube channel at The Crew Radio Show. Repeat, at The Crew Radio Show. You can check out all our previous shows, everything that we've done right there at The Crew Radio Show. We got to run. Thank you to Jason Covington for being our media director extraordinaire. Keeps us going.
We count on him like the sun coming up.
He wants something. When we get off air, he's going to ask you. I guarantee you.
No, I don't want to do it. We gotta run. Until next time, be blessed to be a blessing to someone else. Peace.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of The Crew Radio Show. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. We're always looking for great sponsors to support the show. If your company would like to reach our highly engaged audience, please drop us a line at thecrewradioshow757@gmail.com. Until next time, thank you for kicking it with the crew.